Well, that's right, Hugo. We do know that the ANC is, of course, celebrating 109 years of existence. And of course, we take a look back on the liberation heritage of the ANC. And of course, one would say that this specific venue where I'm at right now has played a very significant role in the party's heritage. But joining us just to tell us more about the ANC and how it became involved with the Liliesleaf farm, we are joined by Nick Welpe. He is, of course, from the Liliesleaf Trust. Now, Nick, as the ANC celebrates 109 years today, how significant is the Liliesleaf farm to its heritage?
I think one must see it within a historical context, but it played an extremely central, important role. I think, first of all, one must remember that Liliesleaf was purchased actually by the South African Communist Party as a meeting place for its Central Committee and Politburo, but it evolved into not only becoming the headquarters of the Communist Party, but also the High Command and also the place the Congress Alliance met. So it became the hub of our liberation struggle during that period. And what makes Liliesleaf more significant over and above the role it played during that period was it led to the Rivonia trial. The raid led to the Rivonia trial, which we know was referred to as the trial of the century. So the raid on Liliesleaf, the Rivonia trial, and the subsequent sentencing of 8 of the 10 accused redefined the liberation struggle, put it onto a completely new trajectory. On the one hand, it forced the ANC in exile under the brilliant leadership of O.R. Tambo to take on and pick up the baton of the struggle. O.R. had already gone overseas to establish the ANC in exile, but his role then, following the raid and the subsequent Rivonia trial and the imprisonment, became one of establishing the ANC and continuing the struggle overseas. So you can see the centrality of the importance of Liliesleaf and how it affected the trajectory, redefined the struggle, and impacted on not only the Communist Party but also the ANC. And I think also you made reference that it's the 109th birthday of the ANC, and I think again where we can draw a very important distinction and link is that the ANC is the oldest and longest surviving liberation movement on the continent. Why has it been, or why is it the longest and oldest liberation movement? And I think Nelson, when he last visited Liliesleaf in 2005, really sums up why the ANC has survived. He said, what made Liliesleaf unique was it was a place of intellectual, ideological, strategic, military discourse and engagement. The hub of the ANC was the battle of ideas, engaging, arguing, recognizing that in order to remain relevant to what Marx referred to as each epoch, we needed to engage with one another to understand what each epoch meant, how we remained relevant. And that has been a central feature of the ANC, and Liliesleaf was the personification of that, a place of dialogue, a place of engagement, a place of discussion.
And Nick, you speak a lot about that day that this place was invaded by the police, and that is quite a significant moment in our country's history, considering all of those who spent a number of years behind bars. And of course, this was to see the liberation of this specific country that we're living in right now. Taking us back to that day, what can you just enlighten us with, and just tell us about the stories in which you were told when the police, the apartheid police, invaded Liliesleaf farm?
Well, our research has highlighted 5 theories about, firstly, how Liliesleaf was exposed, how they came to uncover it. The most, how shall I say, the most logical one, the one that we believe is the correct one, is the fact that it was the CIA that gave up Liliesleaf, but in particular give up the location of Walter Sisulu, because Walter Sisulu had gone underground. After Nelson had been arrested in August of '62, Walter became public enemy number one. He was then arrested. In fact, the lawyer that defended him was my father, Harold Walpe. He was found guilty, but my father managed to get bail before him being sentenced, and he took that opportunity to go underground. So the police at one point thought he had left the country, Walter. But when he did the first broadcast of Radio Freedom, that had made the police aware that he was still in the country. And in fact, when they raided Liliesleaf, one of the things that they claimed at the Rivonia trial was that Radio Freedom was broadcast from here. And if you look, the aerial to our left, or I should say the lightning conductor to our left, was the police claimed that was the aerial for broadcasting Radio Freedom. So the uncovering of Liliesleaf was we believe that the CIA had informed the security police of the whereabouts of Walter and stated that he was staying at Liliesleaf. So the raid on the 11th of July was really to arrest only Walter. They had no idea what they were going to uncover. So it was purely fortuitous. And in fact, during the raid, when we interviewed Dennis Goldberg and Ahmed Kathadra much later for the project, they remember the police saying, "We've hit the jackpot." So that clearly tells you that they were not expecting to find what they found. And in fact, on the day of the raid, Henny Patu, who came here, and it was an amazing, surreal moment, because we brought him here in 2011 to talk about the raid. And as he was walking up the path to meet with Ahmed Kathadra, he yelled out, "Hello, Pedro Vieira, it is lovely to see you again," as if they were two long-lost friends. But Henny Patu was one of the officers involved in the raid on Liliesleaf. And as he got closer to Ahmed Kathadra, he said to him, "Can I tell you what stands out, what I remember most about the raid on the 11th of July 1963? He said, "Everyone else was glum, except you. You smiled. You gave me a beaming smile." And he said, "That's the one thing." So the raid was a fortuitous. They uncovered the leadership. They were not expecting to find the leadership here, and they were not expecting to find the documentation. They had been tipped off that the only person here at the farm at the time was Walter Sisulu. In fact, he wasn't here. He was actually staying at another property because they had purchased this other property called Trevelyan, and they were going to move operations from Liliesleaf to Trevelyan. So on the day of the raid, in fact, was the final last meeting that was taking place here at Liliesleaf.
Now, Nick, we do know that President of the party is Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to deliver this year's January 8th statement. And one would say that he will be delivering this statement in a very difficult time of the ANC, where it has been criticized immensely, especially over the last couple of years. As somebody who is in the movement, what are your expectations when you listen to this January 8th this year, especially at a time where a number of their political figures are also facing corruption charges against them? There's also, of course, this issue of COVID-19, especially as well as the party is trying to fight for this unity, which they keep on talking about.
Well, what I'm hoping is, first and foremost, a return to the principles of what defined the ANC, the values which underpinned the organization, which drove the struggle, which invigorated and captured the imagination of the world to rally around this struggle. These are some of the most important issues which the ANC are facing today. A return to the fundamental values. And it's quite interesting because we're beginning to hear the same thing that the Republican Party are now saying in the United States, that the Republican Party has lost its way. They need to return to the party of Abraham Lincoln, the grand old party that was clearly articulated by the policies of Abraham Lincoln. And that's what we need. We need to hear firm commitment, not words only, but deeds and actions that we plan to return to the fundamental principles that defined the ANC as set out and articulated by a number of documents, one being the Freedom Charter, because we hear often people talk about the Freedom Charter. And that Freedom Charter is central. We need to re-establish a place in our society for the Freedom Charter. Governor Mbeki talked about the Freedom Charter as our moral compass. If you go to OR Tambo Airport and you drive by and you see the statue, that magnificent statue of Oliver Tambo, what is he holding? He's holding the Freedom Charter. That says something. That tells us where the Freedom Charter lies within the ambit of the organization, what it means, what it represents. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that defined our organization was an organization predicated on dialogue, debate, and discussion, as Nelson said. This is what Liliesleaf symbolized, and Liliesleaf was an articulation of what the ANC stood for and represented, the movement in its totality, in fact, the Congress Alliance. So we must return to those fundamental values, to those values that are set out in the Freedom Charter. And also, because you made reference to COVID-19, the reality is the world has been devastated. And what it has shown is the divide between poor and the wealthy. I mean, I read recently that during last year, the wealthiest accumulated over $600 billion. I mean, that is disgusting when you look at the number of people who have lost jobs, the number of people around the world who are dependent on food banks, on food kitchens, on support. We need to go back to the fundamentals of putting the people first, of making sure that we, the people, are looked after, that the poor, the vulnerable, the marginalized are looked after. This is something that we must return to. COVID has highlighted the disparity, the grave disparity between wealth and poverty. And solidarity is critical to that. We need to rebuild the ideals of solidarity, not only geographically, but globally, within South Africa and beyond. We need to tackle these ills that we are confronted with, the social ills, from not only a local perspective, but from a global perspective. And that is what I'm hoping to hear, that we return to those arch principles that really fueled and were the fuel and nourishment of our struggle.
All right, thank you very much. Of course, so that is Nick Walpe. He is from the Liliesleaf farm, just talking about the history and the significance of Liliesleaf, and also just his expectations when the president of the ANC delivers that statement much later on this evening. We know that the NEC has made major contributions to this statement. They were also then joined by former presidents Thabo Mbeki, as well as the former president Jacob Zuma. Also, Nick Walpe there saying that the party needs to return to its values from the Freedom Charter. It's back to you.
Thank you, Mbali Thethani, our reporter coming to us live from Liliesleaf farm in Rivonia.